How can something so simple like a sine wave be so versatile? After all, we use sound to transfer information in speech or music. How can such a simple wave like this contain so much information? Well, the short answer is that it can't. This wave just sounds like a single tone. In this video, we're going to see and hear what we can do to make this sine wave sound a little more like something you might hear in the real world. Until now, we've looked at our sine wave as a signal that changes over time, like a floating ball moving up and down on the crest of a wave. I want to look at our wave in a slightly different way. I'm going to assume that the basic shape of our sine wave never changes. It always looks like a rise and fall over time. So what properties of my wave can I change? There are in fact 3 properties I can change, but for now I'm going to deal with only 2 of them. We'll deal with a third in a later blog post. I'm going to change the frequency or pitch and the amplitude or loudness of my wave. In the following demonstration, you can hear how my sine wave rises and falls in frequency, and also how it keeps getting louder and quieter within each cycle. You can also see this on the graph too. As the wave gets higher in pitch and quieter in amplitude, the peaks and troughs of my wave bunch together and become smaller. As the pitch falls, the wave gets louder. The peaks and troughs spread out and increase in height again. So if I already know what my basic sine wave looks like, I don't really need to see the wave itself. What interests me is its frequency and its amplitude. So I'm going to plot my sine wave on a new graph. We can now see our single sine wave represented as a peak. As the frequency increases, the peak moves to the right, and as it decreases again, the peak moves back to the left. As the amplitude decreases, the peak gets smaller, and as the amplitude increases again, the peak gets bigger. This new way of looking at my sine wave is known as looking at it in the frequency domain, plotting the amplitude of my sine wave against its frequency, as opposed to the way we looked at it before in the time domain, where we plotted how the amplitude of our sine wave changed over time. This distinction is going to be very important to us later on as we get deeper into what the Fourier Transform does, but for now I want to use the frequency domain to look at how we might change our basic single frequency sine wave into something more interesting, something a little more musical. So let's go back to the sine wave we had before. Here it is in the time domain, and here it is in the frequency domain. What happens now if we add another sine wave? You can see our new sine wave represented in the frequency domain as a new peak to the right of the first one, meaning that it is a sine wave with a higher frequency than the first. The peak is smaller, telling us that it is not as loud. Now, let's look at the effect it has on our sine wave in the time domain. Now we're going to add another sine wave at another frequency, and another one, and another. Each sine wave appears as a new peak in our frequency domain graph and changes the shape of the waveform in our time domain graph. As we add more and more sine waves to our signal and begin to play a little with their amplitudes, our waveform begins to actually sound like something real. A cello, in fact, playing the note A.